This is the China-Hollywood Greenlight Podcast, episode number 9.
And rolling sound. Quiet.
Here we go. Ready.
Speeding. 120, take 7.
And action.
This is Caryn McCann, the host of the China-Hollywood Greenlight Podcast. Welcome to the first episode of 2018. Today's podcast will be a roundup of what several experts say Americans and Chinese studios are looking to produce in the near future. I took a few clips from a broad spectrum of guests, including a studio head, a lawyer, an independent film and TV company, and an animation company. I hope this information can crystallize for you, as it has for me, how to make your projects more marketable and get you closer to your own greenlight. If you like the show, please go to iTunes, subscribe, and leave a rating so other people can find the podcast. Any links mentioned in the podcast can be found in the show notes, as well as a full transcript at chinahollywoodgreenlight.com/podcast, and look for this episode, which is number 9. Before we begin, I'd like to start with a motivational quote. Today's quote comes from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he said, "Always do what you are afraid to do." My first clip is from Peter Iacono, who is the president of International Film and TV Distribution Lionsgate. Lionsgate sealed a $1.5 billion deal with China's Hunan TV. That deal encompasses film finance as well as Hunan's foreign language output deal, in international markets, and a TV production component. Mr. Iacono oversees international distribution, sales, marketing, third-party acquisitions, as well as international format sales and productions. Here is that clip. Okay, well, speaking of the future, what sort of future projects are you looking for, and what do you think the Chinese studios or broadcasters are looking for?
I think, the great thing about working at Lionsgate is twofold. And I will answer this question. I think that at the end of it, you might say, I don't know, did he actually answer the question at all? Because he seemed to say he's looking for everything. Because we're a very wide and diverse company and we're a very entrepreneurial company, we always look at everything. But our calling card, our real calling card, and what we are most known for and what we are best at is big drama, high quality, big drama. And it would be wonderful to be able to figure out a way to make something in China that we could distribute around the world. It'd be wonderful to take a Chinese story and perhaps make that in the English language or other languages that could be distributed around the world. So both maybe doing something outside of China that could go into China, or maybe looking at a wonderful Chinese story that could be distributed within China and the region, because we are best known for high quality, great storytelling, big drama. That being said, we're also currently right now looking at possibly putting some unscripted competition game show formats on air in the Chinese market. So that's very, very different from a big budget drama. So that's why I think you say when I answer the question, it might sound like, oh my gosh, well, it seems like he's looking at everything, because if he's looking at the biggest, highest quality budget dramas and also looking at some unscripted competition reality shows, then he's really looking at everything soup to nuts, which is somewhat as an essence of truth to it, because we're always looking for anything that is unique, where our calling card is unique and good quality.
And what language?
Primarily we do produce in the English language, but we have been looking at getting footholds into the Chinese market. And so because it is new for us, looking at a unscripted show is a lot easier. It's a baby step. It's a great first step into that market. And then, but perhaps with luck, that can blossom into scripted television shows and feature film.
My takeaway are as follows. Lionsgate is known for big, high-quality dramas, and they're looking for a Chinese story that can be distributed around the world. Number 2, parallel to those big dramas, they are looking to break into the Chinese TV market by finding an unscripted competition game show format. They hope that will lead to making narrative TV shows and feature films. In this next segment, I interviewed Larry Namer, the head of Matan Development Group, which is a China-centric media and entertainment company. Here is what he said about what they're looking for and what the Chinese studios are looking for.
Well, the Chinese studios are looking for big hits. That's a simple answer. We are not going to be players in, the big, the big Transformer kind of movies or anything like that. That's not where we shine. So we tend to stay. We love doing internet content. We love doing things for brands that really want to integrate a brand message into a story that's told over episodes of a TV show, not as a 30-second commercial. So we love developing those because you get immediate feedback. Whether you've been successful. In China, a successful show can move the acceptance needle for a brand several points, which here in the U.S. you can't do that anymore. And so we look for films that we think transcend both China and the U.S. So we're doing 3 films now that are in some form of pre-production. We've got several TV shows. We're looking at some music opportunities. So that's kind of it.
The feature films, are those all one particular genre?
No, the feature films are across the board. I mean, the biggest one we're doing is something called Empress, which is about the first woman ruler of China. It's been done in China's TV shows many, many times. And, the Chinese, she's kind of the George Washington of China, so everybody there knows her, but nobody outside of China will know who it is.
Right.
In China, she's been dealt with as this famous historical figure. We're looking at doing this movie a little bit differently, where we're taking her and looking more at her as a woman who's really struggling to make it in a male-dominated society and all the things that she went through because she was a woman as opposed to the traditional male emperor. So that's being written by Ron Bass, who won the Academy Award for Rain Man. And the movie is going to be done all ethnically Chinese actors, but the movie will be done in English.
Oh, in English.
Yeah, so, because, again, we've managed to give it a universal theme, women struggle to make it in a male-dominated society. And if we can, make a good movie, people actually learn a little bit about Chinese history and Chinese culture. Where if we did the movie in Mandarin, then, subtitle it, maybe 1% of people around the world will go see it.
Well, in the past, a lot of your content has been in Chinese. So is this a new departure where you're going to do more stuff in English?
That's a departure, and it's actually something that was suggested to us by some folks in the Chinese government, and at first we kind of raised our eyes and said, really? But then when we thought about it, they were right. They said if people, if you subtitle it, who's going to go see it?
Right.
If you make English, people might actually learn a lot. She's not a controversial figure in a political sense. She's controversial in, many other ways. And, it's quite a while back in history. Not a sensitive subject, and that's a little bit different. We look for we like low budget because it's a business model that we can work in. And the other new thing that we've done is we've actually started a film fund where which is outside of China, which we're doing tax credit lending and pre-sales lending for independent films that we think have a chance of playing in China, even if it's just on digital platforms. So we're now in the film finance business a little bit, and that's a new thing.
The takeaway here is Matan Development loves internet content. Also, the big news from Larry is that they are now shooting in English. Other important market intelligence you can use would be their ideal budget as they said in the previous interview, is between $5 and $10 million. That they started a film fund outside of China. They can do tax credit lending and pre-sales lending for indie films that can play in China, even if it's just on digital platforms. Next up is Sky Moore, who is a partner in the corporate entertainment department of Greenberg Glusker, practicing entertainment, corporate, and tax law. He represents various entertainment professionals, including producers, sales agents, foreign distributors, and financiers. He is the author of several books, including The Biz, the basic business, legal, and financial aspects of the film industry, and Taxation of the Entertainment Industry, plus the book What They Didn't Teach You in Law School. He points out the difference between American and Chinese producers is that Americans are looking for money and the Chinese are looking for content. He mentions how the Chinese have turned inward. Here is what he said. Let me ask this. What sort of future projects are your clients looking for? Film, TV, genre, budget, and what do you think the Chinese studios are looking for?
They've really turned inward right now, and the market's been so big there. Wolf Warrior coming in at like over like $900 million US. So they're quite. My clients are either doing Chinese productions in China, and I've got U.S. clients that have gone to China. China. If you're in China, it's a totally vibrant market. It's what the U.S. was 30 years ago. It's growing. It's vibrant. There's a lot happening. So and to the extent they're doing anything in the U.S., it's looking to acquire films that have worked, like franchise films that have worked in the U.S. For example, that worked in China. I had a client that bought, there was a film called Escape Plan that worked very well in China, and so I had a client that bought the sequel rights to Escape Plan 2 and 3. And then there was a film called Now You See Me, and they did the sequel to that, and so you see a lot of acquisition of films that they think will work in China, particularly franchise films that the first one worked in China. So you'll see a lot of that activity.
Is there a difference between your American clients, what they're looking for, and what the Chinese studios are looking for?
Yes, China, U.S. companies are always just looking for money, and Chinese companies are looking for content. So, that's really the big difference.
And are the Chinese clients? Is there a particular? I mean, you mentioned Now You See Me and Escape Plan. Everybody knows about Wolf Warrior. Is it a lot of action movies they're looking for, or a certain budget range?
Different budget range, action adventure. Action adventure.
Later in the interview, Sky made an explosive comment about the future of U.S.-Chinese co-productions, which could possibly sink your project. Here is that clip. Well, this next question is a little bit tricky. What question did I not ask you that I should have?
Well, I've alluded to it, but you really need to ask the currency issue. What is, because the key thing that's happened since January is it just completely turned on its head. There was $10 billion of money that came from China to Hollywood in the last, from 2014 to 16, and then in 17 it's just shut off, and I mean shut off. So everything is, everyone that had a contract breached it. And no new deals are happening, and it's all because of the currency restriction. And what's happening is, and it's important to know the reason behind that. There's a couple of things. One is that China wants the Chinese companies to invest in China, but another is absolutely the Trump effect. That is, China is absolutely wants to keep their powder dry to see what Trump does, because. Just to pick one example, again, North Korea. And I will tell you, if the taps are turned off intentionally, because it's a loud message to the U.S., which is they were a big driver, at least of the Hollywood economy, for 3 years, and that tap is off, and they're waiting to see what Trump does. And I think people are underestimating the impact that has, and I think people are totally underestimating the impact that North Korea will have. You cannot. if there is any military action in North Korea, you're going to have a very unhappy China, and the very threat of it is making a very unhappy China. And there have been loud, vociferous threats so you already have a very unhappy China, and that's you can't overlook that. You can't just talk about China and the U.S. in a vacuum without really looking at the geopolitical implications of what's happening. And I don't see it lightening up for 4 years.
Well, let's assume we don't go to war. I hope. What would need to happen to mollify China? Do you think that we want to work with China? That Trump wants to work with China. I mean, this is way off the topic, but I'm curious.
No, but it's important, which is right. He would have to stop the chest thumping and you'd have to get back off North Korea, and you'd have to back off this whole anti-China rhetoric, and embrace them and treat them as equal partners, trading partners, like we do Europe. Although that's become contentious too, remarkably.
Yeah.
But you have to embrace them as partners and not as the evil empire.
My takeaway is this. Sky says Chinese money has been turned off intentionally due to the Trump effect. What can you do? Get a European producer on your team. Make it a German China co-pro or a UK China co-pro. If the currency restriction continues, your best bet is to film your script in China. Now, this leads to my interview with Charles Morris, the VP of Acquisitions and Development of Global Genesis Group. He talked about their recent animation success in China. When asked about what he's looking for, he mentioned their current slate, which included a period piece, a horror film, and the animation projects with connections to China. When I asked what he thought the Chinese studios were looking for, he pointed out that Chinese money was no longer leaving China, but he had an interesting solution to that. Here is that clip. Have you heard, I mean, you've got these great relationships with these Chinese companies. Have they given you any insight as to what they might be looking for, Chinese companies?
Right now, a lot of it is it's been in the news that, not as much money is leaving China to come to productions in the United States, that a lot of Chinese companies, want to film things in China. And so, those are the kind of projects that we're talking to them about, whether we have a script that can be adapted to, if it takes place in Cabo San Lucas at a resort, then why can't we put it on, an island off of China or something like that? Those are the conversations we have. We have a creature feature called Hogzilla that takes place in the South, but we're supposedly in Hong Kong they had problems with these giant wild boars, and so now, I mean, what's the difference, if we have giant wild boars in Arkansas, or if we have them in Hong Kong or some rural, city in China. And so those are the kind of things that we're talking to them about.
My takeaway is this. As Charles said, not as much money is leaving China to do production in the U.S. Chinese companies want to film in China. He talked about how they are adapting a U.S. script to be shot in China. Now, this is a great idea, but the caveat is it has to appeal to a Chinese audience. You can't just change the location from New York to Shanghai and expect it to work. So, if you do adapt your screenplay to be shot in China, my suggestion is to find a Chinese reader who can give you some feedback. But as Charles said, the trend is for Chinese companies who are looking to film in China, not in the U.S. So that's my wrap-up for 2017. Going forward, I hope this market intelligence helps you shape your projects so you can get your own green light. In this last segment, I'd like to update the audience on my projects. This is the episodic part of the podcast where you get to see how I am progressing on my own path. I have 2 points. Number 1, I sent a few scripts to folks I met at the AFM. Number 2, I went through my database of news stories on Chinese film companies and found an article that mentioned a Chinese financier is now looking to make international films. I contacted them yesterday, and last night the owner of the company asked me to send him my scripts. So always read the trades. I hope you had a great 2017, and we all look forward to a great 2018. If you are interested in being a guest on the podcast or want to suggest someone, shoot me an email at podcast@China-Hollywood Greenlight.com. If you like the show, go to iTunes and leave a rating and a comment. This will help others find the show. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you at the premiere. Bye. 一会儿见.